Vienna is a city both new and old. Statues that gaze at today's traffic are reminders of the past. But in Vienna, like elsewhere, past and present must be balanced against the future. A new challenge to that balance is coming from the very items that define this modern world. The sheer volume of electronics that are manufactured, then used, and eventually thrown away is an emerging environmental issue that challenges Vienna, Austria, Europe, America, and the entire world. In Europe, electronic waste, or e-waste, is growing 3 times faster than other waste. In Vienna, experts from all over the world gathered to discuss recent European Union laws and directives designed to deal with e-waste, learn what they mean for both industry and consumers, and to hear what additional laws are being considered. The first 2 directives became law in 2003, setting collection, recycling, and recovery targets for electronics in 2003. One is called WEEE, or Waste and Electrical and Electronic Equipment. WEEE demands that companies that want to sell products in Europe find a way to take back the products when they've reached the end of their lives. The other is called RoHs, or Reduction on the Use of Certain Hazardous Substances.
RoHs is, in theory, quite simple. It's the removal. It's basically the removal or substitution of 6 hazardous materials, including lead and cadmium, from products down to a certain percentage level.
WEEE is one strategy to remedy problems like this: the dumping of e-waste in underdeveloped countries, where it's then taken apart under conditions that expose everyone, including women and children, to toxic materials that are harmful to human health. While many European countries have a history of recycling, these directives bring recycling to a new level. Campaign billboards on the sides of garbage trucks remind people that small electronics, even though they fit in the garbage, don't belong in the garbage. Instead, they belong here, a recycling facility. Rainier Kronberger with the City of Vienna shows us around a standard recycling facility outfitted to also recycle e-waste.
Da sieht man auch die alte Computer.
It accepts all kinds of material, from motor oil to medicine. He says they see all sorts of e-waste.
In terms of electronics, we see refrigerators, monitors, TV screens, small electronics devices like computers, printers, mobile phones.
This boy is helping his father recycle.
Naja, wir wohnen hier in der Umgebung und wir haben einen Schulausflug mit der Volksschule hierher gemacht.
Kronberger says the WEEE regulations have encouraged people to recycle.
It's free of charge to bring their electronics to our places, to our recycling centers. And this means that the amounts that we are collecting are increasing.
He says consumers are willing to bring in the large things, but they're less likely to properly recycle small things like cell phones.
We have to focus especially on this fraction, on this category, on the small devices that go easily to the waste bin and that is not collected separately. That's our problem now.
Because of the effort, many of the residents of Vienna know that e-waste must be handled properly, but some are unsure how.
Ich würde gerne von dir wissen, was du mit einem alten Computer machen würdest, außer ihn hergeben.
Das ist eine gute Antwort. Frage meine ich. Ich habe ihn jetzt, glaube ich, 5 Jahre im Keller stehen lassen. Und ja.
Informing and involving consumers is critical for successful implementation of WEEE and RoHs, and experts agree that a big issue is educating the consumer to recycle and making it easy for them.
They can make a decision on whether they will put it in a system where it's treated in a good way, or if they throw it away somewhere in the not to be handled correctly. So they are a major player actually.
WEEE makes it the manufacturer's responsibility to take back equipment, But there's sharp debate over the details. Should it be an industry-wide responsibility, or should individual companies take back only their own products, a concept called individual producer responsibility? And how hard should manufacturers have to work to make this happen?
Individual producer responsibility does not mean responsibility for waste collection. Individual responsibility does not mean having full responsibility for informing consumers about environmental behavior in general, which is wider than the environmental consequences of the disposal of a product.
While producers may not want individual producer responsibility, others point out that if companies have to disassemble their products, they'll design ways to make disassembly easier and safer.
Those companies that are making design changes to make their products less toxic, easier to disassemble, easier to recycle, would benefit from individual producer responsibility because they will get back their own brand products.
And it, of course, is a tool that shifts the responsibility from the very end of the product to the design.
Why worry about design if recycling laws are getting stronger? In Europe, modern facilities are turning landfills into profit, mining them for both precious and industrial metals. But elsewhere, recycling is much more primitive.
We have quite a bit of so-called recycling channels, which in reality are more kind of backyard operations, not operating due to proper standards. And if you recycle the wrong way, you can have a lot of air pollution, you can emit dioxins, you can emit heavy metals and so on to the environment.
The RoHS directive addresses that by also shifting the problems back to the designers and engineers. It calls for the near elimination of lead, mercury, cadmium, hexavalent chromium, and 3 types of brominated flame retardants.
If you are able to manufacture products which don't contain mercury, for example laptops without a mercury backlight panel, this would have a big positive impact on the recycling industry because you can use much easier processes, less cost-effective processes, and much more secure processes also for the working force.
So even if international treaties fail to keep e-waste out of India and China, at least they would be less of a hazard. But there was a gap between legislative intent and science. Well into the lawmaking process, legislators discovered that a complete ban of lead was not yet practical.
Everything contains a little bit of everything else. Natural tin, it already has 0.1% lead in it just naturally. And to get more of it out would raise the cost of tin hundreds of dollars per kilogram. So they really didn't have any concept of what the science was.
Since devices are assembled from products made all over the world, getting, for example, lead-free components may be a problem.
So suddenly your 50-person supplier in Beijing then is asked to remove lead from solder in the product. They may not even understand the question.
Supporters believe companies will work through the issues, and most agree that Europe's directives will change the way electronics are built worldwide.
The producers do not address anymore the European Union market or the Japanese market or the Chinese market or the United States market. They address the global market. And as a consequence of this, the EU's directives, WeeRoHs, have effectively become global standards, and that is very, very important.
No responsible company would keep 2 inventories, RoHS compliant and non-RoHS compliant, because you're going to have compatibility problems.
This is shaping commerce globally because most electronics producers aren't going to produce 2 different models, one for countries facing the WEEE directive and those in the rest of the world.
But is the world ready for RoHS and WEEE?
In China, our experience is that the big international players are aware of a number of these issues. That it contrasts very much with the small and medium-sized enterprises who really have a zero understanding of some of these advanced concepts.
Even American companies may not be prepared.
I think a lot of companies that we service, especially in the small and mid-sized companies, I believe they're at risk, their business is at risk in not understanding and complying now.
But where some see additional burdens, other companies are seeing opportunity.
I consider for Chinese electronic industry, because eco-design is quite a new concept for us, but these two directives will give a very good opportunity for Chinese electronic industry to do a green electronic innovation.
We and Ross are setting benchmarks for responsibility, but more is needed. Innovation is more than better recycling. These laws and directives can encourage innovation by challenging companies worldwide to step up in lessening the environmental impact of their devices. But in the long run, it will take innovation, green engineering, not just at the end of life, but throughout the life of the product.